Welcome to You Don't Know Ball. Today we're going to be doing team previews for every team in the NFC South. If you don't know ball, want to know ball, be sure to subscribe, leave a like, let us know in the comments who you think is going to win the NFC South. To start it off, Dobbs, our narrative for the Atlanta Falcons is Kirk Cousins good enough to get them over the top? What do you think?
I think so. Again, right? It depends what we define the top as. Because do I think that the Falcons can win the NFC South this year? Oh, without a shadow of a doubt, right? And that's coming from a Saints fan. Like, this is a Falcons team where, right, that was the issue last year. And so you bring in an above average quarterback, but then there's the contingency. The contingency is that we never know how someone's going to look coming off of a devastating, potentially career altering injury. And
at that's
age. Really so it's not like we can look at it with like certainty glasses, like we can look at it with like we're pretty sure the frames are still working, but when it comes week one, it's going to be a matter of like, is this still the same Kirk? We're going to find out pretty quickly. That's really just the reality of the situation. But outside of just Kirk, right? Look, we look at the whole roster. I mean, they've put together a unit. Like, this is a top. If you don't want to say top three, which I would say it's top three. If it's not top three to you, it's top 5 O-line in the entire league. The D line has some established guys, right? Like, we got Onyemata, we got Grady Jarrett, and then we got a nice mix of young up and coming guys that definitely have a chance to make big splashes this year, like Zach Harrison, Arnold Ebiketie. Caden Ellis still fits in that young range, right? And he's right now outside linebacker, but again, another young guy inside linebacker, my apologies, but inside linebacker with a chance to come in, have another year where he gets better and better. Troy Anderson getting better and better. Lorenzo Carter, young, getting better. I mean, they have guys, right? Like Jesse Bates, one of the best safeties in the whole league. I could go on and on. The bottom line is that the Falcons have built a really competitive roster. And really, it just kind of falls on Kirk's shoulders at this point. Because, the bottom line was last year is that all they needed was QB play. Well, now you get the QB play. There's no excuse to not go win the NFC South. But back to your point of, is this team a Super Bowl contender? How about this? On the greatest run, is it possible if they just got hot as a pistol right when the playoffs started? Yeah, it's possible. But I still don't know if this roster is ready to be put into the Lombardi talks,
I guess my thing, Dobbs, I like the Falcons, and, I think Raheem Morris was not a bad hire. Interested to see what Zach Robinson can do. I do think the skill positions on offense are probably going to get utilized more than they did with Arthur Smith, because we know Arthur Smith runs a specific type of offense. I guess my thing is, I think Kirk can be good enough to get them over the top. I struggle to see them beating a team like the 49ers, though, in the playoffs. Like, I really do. And I think Darnell Mooney can be a very good wide receiver, too, especially because you have a Kyle Pitts who should technically be your wide receiver 1 or 2 with Drake London there. So Mooney can really be the 3. And then you got the threat of the run game with Bijan, Tyler Algier, and their rookie Chase McClellan. But with that being said, I do think that if the defense isn't able to close it out, like, the defense is not what it's supposed to be this year, especially with a defensive-minded head coach, I don't hate the Penix pick for what it is, right? I don't hate it, because the idea of, after they did not have Matt Ryan, they struggled at quarterback really badly. And we've seen it with the Packers be able to really develop quarterbacks and have guy after guy after guy. I mean, you don't pay Jordan Love unless you think he is the guy, right? And Jordan Love has been really, really good those games that they paid him for. If they do not do great this year on defense, there is going to be a lot of talk about, we had the number 8 pick, we could have got Byron Murphy. We had the number 8 pick, we could have got Leatu Latu. We had the number 8 pick, we could have gotten Dallas Turner. I understand their thinking, but what is the point of signing Kirk Cousins to compete for 2 years to then also not improve the roster? I get why you want the succession plan if you really do like Penix. Like, if that's your franchise guy, that's invaluable. And I think the age thing is overblown with him. I think my main issue is I think the Falcons can do it. I think there was questions on defense that needed to be addressed, and they did not really address them. I mean, AJ Terrell is good. Yes. Jesse Bates is good. Yes. Rook Ororo, I don't know if he's going to make an impact right now. Braylon Trice could be good. He can be a contributor, but I don't know if they did enough on defense to really put them over the top this year. And I don't know how much their offense is going to be able to carry them this year. That would be my main concern.
No. And again, I'm with you on all that. And I think that's kind of like to tie it all together, like what you're saying. I think that's back to the Penix thing. That's the issue at hand with the Penix pick. Is I think, look, right, we'll go back and we'll use the Packers example, because I don't want to be crystal clear. I actually do think that clearly a team more than just the Packers have showed it. The Chiefs showed us too. I think that there's something truly invaluable about drafting somebody high, but understanding that much like rarely when you see Power 5 schools getting a freshman quarterback who's a 5-star unbelievable recruit, that they don't just throw him into the fire right away. Like, I think, call me crazy, but I think there's something invaluable about giving him time to get used to the speed of the game and playing with 30-plus-year-old men, right? And giving them that year to get acclimated, or more than a year. I think it's a very invaluable thing that I think more teams are going to start noticing, and it will become more of a trend, right? More, if anything, shout out to the Falcons for getting on the trend early. But here's the problem, and this is kind of where I want to tie it all together, is that when a team like the Packers is doing it, when a team like the Chiefs is doing it, they were already in a position where you could say with their starter, right? Granted, Alex Smith is a different scenario than Aaron Rodgers. But again, you go back and look at the records, look at these teams. Those are both teams where you could say these teams could really win the Super Bowl even with these starters, and they're still putting in a plan for the youngins. So it's like a double win. But with the Falcons, it's like, do we really think that this team is genuinely competing for a Super Bowl? And that kind of goes back to my original point. I think that they feel kind of a lot like, trying to think of another good team to compare them to. You know, I can't right now. But you know those teams where you're like, yeah, they're going to give teams some fits. They're going to give teams some trouble. How about, I'll use like the Chargers a couple years ago when they lost to the Jaguars in the first round. That's a prime example. You're like, yeah, they're a team that can make some noise. Any given Sunday, they can show up and upset a team, and they're a good team. But do you really think they're going to go and win the Lombardi? Like, no. And I think the Falcons kind of just fit into that exact same mold, which to me is what makes the Penix pick confusing, because to your point, if you were maybe just one or two picks away from really dialing it in and picking an all-pro or something, maybe you could have pushed yourself to that Super Bowl range and then done the QB thing a year or two down the road. I get it, though. You know, you can also look at it from the other side of the spectrum and say, well, if they're saying to themselves, no matter what, even with Kirk, that they don't believe the Super Bowl contenders, why not add the guy that right now that you think down the road could make them officially a Super Bowl contender? Like, I get it. It's very double-edged sword. It's very however you want to view it. But the bottom line is, to answer the question all in all, do we think the Falcons can go all the way this year? I don't think it's fair to the rest of the NFC to say that they could do it this year.
Yeah, I don't know. And I think maybe they're gearing up for next year. I mean, obviously they want to take a run at it, right? Like, I just think this has kind of been a narrative for Kirk, is that he hasn't shown up in big games.
Yeah, unless he plays the Saints for whatever reason.
Yeah. So I guess my thing is like, the Falcons are one of those teams where it's like, if they're good, honestly, let's be real. The Falcons can't win this year with the public opinion. If they're good this year, everyone's like, well, you were supposed to be good. And if you're bad, you're like, well, why'd you take a quarterback at number 8 when you just signed somebody? So they're literally in the worst position, in my opinion, because it's like a very talented team. It's like, well, you're supposed to be good. And then if you lose, it's like, well, they had all this talent, they lost. Like, they're not a good, the shitty, blah, blah, blah. So basically my point is, I wouldn't want to be in the Falcons organization this year because it is really like if you win or like let's say the Falcons don't win a playoff game this year. Let's say they make the playoffs but don't get a playoff win. Is that a win to you? Like, in my opinion, this team should have been a playoff team the last couple years. So it's like, no. I don't know.
Well, and I want to bring this up because I think this is something that, and again, this is down the road stuff, but I think we always like to stay ahead of the curve, right? It's kind of one of our trademarks here. Something you got to think about is, okay, Bijan Robinson plus, right, the 1 year window they're going to have added because it's the first round pick. So we have what? So 4 seasons at this point before Bijan is either going to have to get extended upon or, right, whatever, down the road. Drake London coming up soon enough here. And then you just extend your O-line guys. But then in a matter of time, and you'll see where I'm tying this all back to, is that who's going to be due for money in realistically about, let me do some math. So in 5 seasons here, especially if he ends up panning how you think. And we see how the quarterback money is developing. Michael Penix is going to be due for that money. And he's probably realistically only going to have started, if the Falcons' plan goes perfectly according to plan, 1 or 2 seasons most at that point, right? So you might have to pay him top dollar off of a small sample size. You got to pay all these other guys coming up in the future, right? This is just down the road. I guess the thing I'm trying to say is the way Penix's contract is set up might be a little bit interesting, where you're going to have to be paying a lot of bigger, not a lot of, but a fair number of bigger name guys, especially across on that O-line too, where there's going to be a lot of money tied up in this offense in a very short period of time down the road. But again, it's the NFL. For all I know, Bijan Robinson could end up on another team somehow in the next 3 years. Drake London could end up, we don't know the future. But I'm just saying, if things all go according to the Falcons' plan and it really goes fully according to fruition, there's going to be a lot of money on that offensive side of the ball that's going to have to be tossed around in the next 3 or 4 years down the road. Very far down the road, but, just something to keep an eye on.
All right, so overall, before we move on, final answer, is Kirk good enough to get the Falcons over the top this year?
I think we agree. If getting you over the top is winning a playoff game, I think he is. But if getting over the top is going to Lombardi land and bringing it home to Atlanta, I don't think this is the year.